Welcome to Continuing the Conversation, where we bring you authentic AI insights for real people and real businesses. I'm your host, Chelene Martin, business strategist and AI enthusiast. And my mission is simple: help people stop being impressed by AI and start actually getting value from it. Because let me start with something I think a lot of you have experienced. You've seen a demo, the AI is flawless, perfect context, brilliant answers, feels almost magical. You walk out thinking, this changes everything. And then you try to roll it out inside your business. And suddenly, nothing works, or at least it doesn't work like you thought it would. The answers are off, the adaptation stalls, and that magical system starts to feel like a really expensive autocomplete. Everyone explains people don't trust AI enough. Companies aren't ready. Change management is the problem. What if the problem is something much more fundamental about our businesses and how they're actually built? Joining me today is Rob, the CEO of CharmIQ. Rob, are you ready to talk about why AI demos feel magical, but deployments hit walls?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so every AI vendor shows these incredible demos. The AI understands the context perfectly, gives brilliant responses, seems to almost read your mind. Then you bring it into your business, and it's like watching a Formula One car try to navigate a construction zone. So what is actually happening in that scenario, in that gap?
That's a great question. We run into this at CharmIQ all the time when I give demos. So when you work with a demo, you're working in, by definition, a well-defined box. Like somebody has curated the experience, curated the context, the environment, the questions, and everything. And all of that context is what makes modern LLMs, whether that's image generation or text generation or video generation, all of that has been tweaked and tooled so that the context gives you exactly what you want. We see this with our demo process all the time. So I give demos to people and then I do follow-ups once people get on the platform. And so I will start with some context that the customer has provided ahead of time, and we'll go through it and show them the experience. It will build that context and build on it. But even with the conscious effort of showing like how to build all this stuff, when I go back and talk to those customers a few weeks later, they're in a blank workspace and they're like, I don't have any information. It's not giving me anything. I'm not feeling it. And I look at their reference material and it's empty. I look at their prompt and it's like, do X, Y, Z, and they're just not getting it. So it's really all about the context. That's where it all comes in.
Yeah. I've seen that too with clients. It's like the demo environment is set up so perfectly and clean, and we know what we're going to talk about. And we do kind of create this magical experience for them because we have all the working parts, right? We have the right context.
And experience too, by the way.
Yes. And experience. So true. So you've used this term context collapse, which I love because it feels very specific. Can you break down what actually happens when AI that worked perfectly in a demo suddenly can't function in real business environments? I know we talked a little bit about that, but I think we can talk a little bit more because I think this part is so key to that experience.
Absolutely. So I think in last week's episode, you gave a perfect example with your children and helping them on a particular book, on a particular version, on a particular type and section and so forth. Providing all of that detailed context is super important. So going back to what I said a few moments ago, folks will go in without any context about their business, what they do, who they are, and so forth. And they'll ask a question and you'll get the same generic answer that you'll get anywhere else. Remember that the LLMs are trained on a bunch of information, but without, it goes back to the norm. So I always use the Einstein on the phone analogy. If you call up Einstein on the phone or the smartest person you know and say like, help me summarize my email or help me with this marketing report, what are they going to say? They don't know you. They don't know what it is, what context and everything else. And so that's what it really, really boils down to is if you collapse that context down to zero, right, then there is no additional information other than the most generic answer that you could provide. On the opposite, the more context that you provide, the more richness that can be provided about the things that is specific to you and your environment and your problem and your approach to problems and so forth. And we're not talking, hours of work that you need to do here. No. We're just simply talking about, and hopefully you're building up this context as you go along, roping in previous conversations that you might have had and said like, hey, this conversation didn't go right this way. take it a different way, just as you can do with your colleagues. Remember what we talked about last week, and then they can bring that context in your brain. You need the same kind of information when you're talking with your LLM or working with AI.
Yeah, that's such an important point, because when leaders say AI failed, or what they're often saying is, and what we're seeing and what I see is, our processes are chaotic and now AI is exposing it, right? Human systems and like human training can survive on intuition and tribal knowledge and things like that, but AI can't. It needs stable inputs, constant definitions, predictable handoffs. And most businesses, if we're really honest, were never designed that way, right? So it sounds like we're trying to jam AI into processes that were never designed for it, but most businesses can't just rebuild everything from scratch. So how do businesses identify which parts of your businesses are AI ready versus AI not ready?
That's a great question. So I'm going to kind of go in a little bit of a loop before I get to that, because I was just talking with a buddy of mine who does marketing this morning. He just moved recently to work with a new company, and he was reminding me what that thing that we all do when we go to a new company, which is you have to learn so much about that company. Like, he has worked with similar companies in the past. He is a marketer by trade. He knows it in and out and so forth. So like, all of his context is good, but like that company's specific context, it's going to take him 6 months to learn what that business does and how it differentiates itself and all these other things. So really think about that. Again, if you're in there with your chat GPT and you're just like, give me this marketing report, like, think about if you had a human do that, it would take months of context, of discussions, of information pulled back and forth, and tweaks and dialogue in terms of like goods and bads and all this other stuff. So think about that. Again, there is so much implicit knowledge that goes into a business. Even if you've been somewhere for only 6 months, you have so much more information about the way that business works and so forth, and everyone else in your environment that you work with has that same knowledge. So that's why those things seem easy and straightforward when you're working with people. And then when you're working with your LLM or whatever, it doesn't have that context of your organization. So again, think about that when you're thinking about the business. And then going back into, well, why does it work and why doesn't it work? And again, I'll take my buddy's example. He just started at the beginning of the year. And clearly that organization is not going to take like the first recommendation that he gives and just immediately implement it, right? There's a notion of trust and of understanding and of a little bit of gradual opening up of the doors of trust. And what's interesting is that building that process with AI doesn't work. Like, it doesn't remember what it did wrong or right the last time unless you literally tell it. Yeah. So if you're just deploying AI in your org, like, there's no really good way, unless you have feedback mechanisms, to like make it get better at what it's doing. And therefore, like, most people put it into a situation that may be high or low risk. It's executing on something. Like, do you have a process whereby it can learn from that mistake? Or is it just constantly making the same mistakes all over the different places? I always listen to Nate Jones. If you've never listened to his podcast on YouTube, it's fantastic around this. He brought this up a couple of weeks ago, talking about, like, why is it that AI seems to be doing so well in software area, but like in no other business area. And what he brought it up to was the fact that software has spent the past few decades figuring out how to create change in an environment such that it can be rolled back. So the reason why we can trust our organizations to make changes in software and roll it out and so forth is because we've built mechanisms in there such that we can roll it back if it doesn't work. Right. We have testing mechanisms that give us trust before it rolls out. We don't just write the software and give it to the customer. It goes through a QA process. It goes through an evaluation process. It goes through all of these different gates and steps. And even once it's out there, if it has to be rolled back, we have ways of doing that. It's typically baked into the software. Like in CharmIQ, for example, we literally have a button that if we roll out a release and it isn't what we want, we can literally hit a button and it goes back instantaneously to the last version. And literally build all of these things into our software. And what's fascinating is that if you think about all of the other areas of business, other than in the software side of the house, there has been no work done to deal with decisions and how to roll them back. Or if we do, we have heavyweight processes that involve humans, of like literal gates of reviews and so forth before things go out the door. So think about trying to roll out your AI is, how do you roll it out in a way that not only is it getting context and feedback for whether things are going right or not, but when things go wrong, what is the risk associated with them, and can it be rolled back? Is it being worked against something internally where you have, before it goes to a customer, that before it gets rolled out? You made a really good example of using Amazon. You have the ability, after you place an order on Amazon, window is like 30 minutes, before the order is shipped and whatnot, it's put in a queue. It basically waits. So if in 15 minutes you're like, oh, I don't really need that, I found it elsewhere, you can actually hit cancel. And they haven't gone through that process yet. So they've built in this notion of basically a take back, right? And there's actually, you can set up Gmail in exactly the same way. You can say, after you send an email, to actually not to send it for a minute. And that gives you, after that regret click, it gives you the ability to pull it back. So unless you explicitly build these mechanisms into your organization, into your processes to support AI, I'll admit, I don't think that there's any way. So even going another way, let's say you take the brightest intern that you have and you put them in front of a client and you're like, go make that sale, or like, go do that thing. So even in that situation, you have like a bit of a gimme back, right? Which is like, hey, it was the intern. Like, you can do a clawback on some of those things. But think about like your website and customer experience with an AI. Have you built in an expectation around whether or not that, like, hey, these answers might be wrong? Or how have you built in trust? How have you built in clawback? How have you built in this notion of like fallibility? Because these things are going to go wrong.
Yes. Absolutely. So this is such a subtle but powerful shift, because trust sounds like it's like a mindset issue, right? A cultural issue, a training issue. And the architecture sounds like work, right? It's admitting that our systems are brittle and our data is fragmented and our decisions rights are unclear. And that's really not an AI problem. That's a business design problem that AI just happens to surface, right? So that's
Absolutely.
that's very interesting. And I think that's such a great thing to think about as we're thinking about AI, as we're thinking about deployment, as we're thinking about using it. And I love what you said, and you always go back to it. Everyone just treats AI like the machine because that's what it is. We really need to treat it like a human, like an intern, right? Like a new hire, right? You wouldn't send a new hire to your best customer to close the deal. Right. Like, so it's interesting.
Or you wouldn't have them draft the contract if they were, the legal intern, or in the marketing, you wouldn't have them generate like the email that's going to go out to all the customers for a thing. Like, there's all of these processes around it. I think that we don't think about that in terms of AI. If there's one single thing that's going to be happening in 2026 and the next couple of years, is we have to start thinking about how that's possible. Because otherwise, we're never going to be able to gain and see these efficiencies through AI unless we start to build in these processes. Are there low risk things that the AI can do for you that even if they do slip through the cracks, like sending out quirky tweets or something, like that's fine, low risk or whatever.
Sure.
But you do not want them like writing your final legal draft. And actually, lots of steps in your process might need a draft phase. There might be a phase in which all that the AI is doing for the next couple of years is getting it to the draft phase, and then a human has to review it.
Yes.
And how many of your processes in your org like have that built in? Because right now we typically give it to a human, and that human executes it and it goes out the door. Like there is a draft phase, but it's in that person, in their process, rather than part of the codified process.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a client recently, and we were setting up just a basic AI kind of implementation. They were very weary at first, and they were like, okay. And they did the exact same thing. They were like, it's not working the way that you showed me it was going to work. I said, well, you have to train it, right? Like, think of it as a new hire. Give it, what does your new hire onboarding look like? Give the AI those documents and train them on the business. Who are you? What do you do? What are your products? What are your services? Who are your customers? Who are your competitors? Right? Boom, boom, boom. Train it, then go to the next step. And they're like, oh, you're right. I guess that makes sense. Train them on who we are, what our business is, so they have all of that context, and then we can deploy them into different departments, right? But it was interesting during that process, there were gaps in learning, and they realized that the onboarding for the new hire training hadn't been updated in 2 years.
Right? We are seeing that all over the place as well. Even as we start to talk about processes within business, and they go, wow, we don't actually have a process for that. I'm like, well, then how do you expect the AI to follow your process if you've never even talked about that process. It's like, well, it's in Mary's head. It's like, well, look, if you want to gain the efficiencies with this stuff, you're going to have to do some of this stuff. And so you lose a little bit of time by documenting your process and thinking it through. But I guarantee you'll gain a lot in that process, again, through the efficiencies of the AI, or to realize sometimes you have processes that even shouldn't be there anymore.
Yeah. And one hot tip I gave to a client, I said, just sit down with the document, hit record, and have the conversation between the onboarding person and the new hire. Capture that. It can be a transcript. Then use AI to help break that transcript down into actual like onboarding processes and learning.
That is an awesome thing. Because yeah, every time you talk to anyone about processes, you see their eyes roll back and they're just thinking about all the work. But it's really amazing these days what you can do with either a video recording of just literally your day, yep, or an audio recording of a meeting and so forth. You'll learn a lot. That's all I will say, because I constantly learn a ton, because we basically record everything that we do, every meeting that we have, and we get so much value. All participants get so much value out of that, because you'll get the like, oh, I didn't mean that, or the like, oh, I didn't really explain that concept very well.
Yeah.
You'll get that feedback, and it is so powerful. So yeah, I always use these experiences as a way to improve. If you're working on your onboarding process or whatever, and you record it, that's amazing, because the last thing you want to do is when you bring in your next human, is make it hard for them. It's hard enough to switch jobs and start a new job. Make it easy for them. Same thing with AI.
Yeah, exactly. The recording thing is it's so powerful, and the way that AI can really summarize it and pull out the learning points or the gaps is amazing. Yes. And guess what? It's no extra time for the human. So let's get very practical. Someone listening right now recognizes themselves in this. Their AI rollout stalled, adoption flattened, leadership is frustrated. What are the concrete steps to make their business more AI compatible? We mentioned a few of them and already gave some hints there, but is there anything else that business leaders listening should start with?
Yeah, so one of the ones that Nate mentioned, and one of the things that we talk about in software all the time, is think about your processes have one-way doors and which one have two-way doors. And so when you have a two-way door, that means that you can both enter and exit. So for example, software, as I mentioned before, if we roll out a release and that release absolutely flubs, we can absolutely bring it back through the door.
Yeah.
But again, there are other processes. Maybe you've modified data, maybe you've made a payment or something to a customer and you have to go through a process. Those are one way. And I'll just say that right now, finding those doors that are two-way are great places to start working around the process with AI, because you already then have built in the ability to again, claw it back, or to do what happens when it goes wrong. And then something we had said many episodes ago is look at risk. Risk is a really important thing in businesses. There are high risk decisions, low reward. There are low reward, et cetera. You get the point. You go through your grid of risk reward, and you find the ones that have high reward and low risk, and those things, and especially if they have two-way doors on them, those are great opportunities. So, and I know we don't do it. We get used to it. As Chelene said, with the onboarding experience, one of the only times that you really look at your process and so forth is when you're forced to bring on somebody new.
Yeah.
And somebody else, or the process needs to change, or more customers or something. Like, those are the times to like really focus on these things. So if you already have something in the pipeline where you're retooling a process because it's growing or something, like, then is exactly the right time to go through there. And again, look for your two-way doors, do your risk reward, and just start there. And I would say then the third thing is, like, do you have enough context? Could you take an experienced individual from a different field? So, for example, if I'm in CPG and I'm an attorney, like, can I take my knowledge and apply it immediately to finance, right? Like, and there are like, no, right? Because like, just because I'm a CPG attorney, like, I don't know any of the nuances of banking regulations, right? So like, you want to look for areas where, the reason I bring up this example is, where AI is going to be really good is it knows the baseline, but you have to differentiate it, right? So things that are very normalized, you don't have to provide it as much of context. So the least amount of context are the things that are very like normal processes. And again, that's neither bad nor good. Again, it's just the amount of specificity that you're going to have to provide.
Yeah. So this is such an important reframe, because instead of asking, where can we plug in AI, you're really asking, where can we design decisions to be more reversible, more observable, right? And
Yes.
more supported by data. And that's not an AI strategy. That's like a better business strategy.
Which again is what's always funny about these things. All of the things that you will be doing in order to facilitate AI are going to be good things for you to do in general.
Yeah.
So, finding your two-way doors and finding like you have one critical one-way door and like that person may be aging out, like that's a high risk situation. Like you have to figure out how to deal with that. So again, this is a great opportunity for you to really retool and rethink some of these things.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about CharmIQ because I know the platform is very good at helping businesses with this. And this is a great starting point. And sometimes we do the demos and it's amazing, but then we look at the context and it's all over the place. So how does CharmIQ address this architectural compatibility problem? And what makes your platform different from trying to retrofit AI into existing business systems?
Totally. So hopefully for those that are listening, you hear our common themes, which is it's all about context. It's all about really control. It's really about controlling that context and seeing whether or not that context is giving you the value that you think it does. And so we have a lot of fundamental components in the platform, from reference materials to breakpoints to just the way that we interact, to separating out your charm into different personas, like all of these different conceptual things. All of them are specifically designed because, again, I can't imagine a world, and it happens to everyone who's really in bed with our platform and uses it all the time, and then goes to use a different platform. And they're like, well, where do I put this? Like, where do I put all my reference material? Like, how do I keep this thread going across all of these different things? How do I take this document that I just built up all this context, and how do I feed it into the next phase? Like, how do I visualize all this stuff? So those are the things that, and again, anyone who's listened to us long enough knows, like, these are repeating things, like we can't live without them. So they are absolutely represented as first principles within our platform. And then I would just say the usual things, which is everything that we're talking about here. And what's so funny is you can literally take a transcript of this podcast and you can give it to your charm writing charm, and you can say, hey, these guys were just talking about these kind of things. You rope in your specific business context and you're like, where should I start? Like, where are my two-way doors in my organization and so forth? And again, that's what amazes me about this is sometimes somebody just needs to tell you that. And that's true, because we do that with our customers all the time. They're like, well, I heard like that podcast, like that was a whole bunch of great information. I'm like, great, just grab the transcript and like talk to your dudes about it. Like, you don't need to like talk to me about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I recommend.
Listen to it again. You can just grab the transcript and say, help me sort this out in my business. And even if you don't know what context materials to add, ask it. What do you need from me?
Absolutely. Yeah, and just to say, that's another piece. So recently we added an advanced search that helps with these things, but we've always had the document search. So you can actually use your charms either in a deep research mode or just in a regular mode to actually go through all of your existing material that you have within Charm and like say, hey, like, do we have anything on this information already? And I do that all the time. Is like, I remember talking about something about this, and like it'll literally find it and be like, yeah, that was in your podcast about this and this and this. Like, great. Like, that's amazing. So yeah, don't forget, all these capabilities available to you.
Yeah. And what I love about this approach of like working within CharmIQ and working within the charms and working with it is it doesn't replace the humans, right? It doesn't remove the judgment. It doesn't remove accountability. It redesigns the environment so AI can actually be useful and humans can stay in control. We're the ones providing the context. We're the ones collaborating with it. We're not like, write me a business plan or a contract for the sale, right? We still need to stay in control, which to me is the only sustainable version of an enterprise AI anyways. There's never a scenario in the work that I do that's like, oh, just put in this and get rid of these 10 people, right? Like not yep. Now and not at this stage, right? So Rob, this completely reframes the AI adoption challenge. The problem isn't that we don't trust AI enough. It's that our businesses weren't built for this. It wasn't built for AI collaboration, and that's okay. And the magic you see in the demos isn't just about better models. It's about better environments. So if your AI rollout hit a wall, stop asking, how do we trust AI more? Why is this not working? Start asking, how do we build AI compatible systems? because the companies that win with AI won't be the ones with the fanciest models. They'll be the ones with the best architecture. And I think that hopefully was very clear during this episode that the architecture and the context is so key to success. So before we go, any last thoughts, tips, or tricks for anyone listening?
I'll just say, if you're not watching all of the interesting things coming out of the Davos right now, we just had Amadei and Hassabis give their views on where we are and what's going to happen this year. Very interesting things. So make sure you're keeping up to date on all of the new interesting information. We'll bring as much as we can into these podcasts in the future, but otherwise, keep looking for those environments in which this stuff can really help you accelerate. It's amazing.
Yeah. And if you don't know where to start, just talk to your charms, talk to your, talk to AI, ask them, say, start with new hire onboarding. I think that's the best and simplest place to start. And most companies have something. And even if you don't, even if it's all in Mary's head, have Mary sit down with a person and go through a day in the life of a new hire, right? And start there, and you'll be amazed and surprised how quickly you can build an onboarding program utilizing your charms, utilizing the platform, utilizing an LLM. It is amazing. So links to CharmIQ and our previous conversations are below. Rob, thank you for showing us why the demo delusion is really an architecture problem. And thanks for everyone listening and for continuing the conversation with us. We'll see you next week. Bye.